Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's your boy D Black. All right, SmackDown tonight. It was interesting. It was a little bit dead, but it was interesting. Finally, something happened that was pretty good. I like the fact that Randy Orton has turned heel. It was either going to be Randy or it was going to be Cody, and I'd rather have a Randy Orton heel than a Cody Rhodes heel, because Randy Orton is about to bring something magical, hopefully, to WWE and kind of liven up stuff and everything. But it was brutal. He went deep in on Cody and stuff. There was a lot going on tonight, and I feel that they're trying to get some of these things, matched up, for WrestleMania, which is in about 5 weeks, because tonight's card didn't really have anything to build up towards, WrestleMania. So I think that they're trying to push, things together quickly, try to get storylines, together and stuff. But the matches that they're about ready to have, if they're setting up for WrestleMania, these matches are going to be dead. I mean, it's just like the matches that we'll probably see are matches that we could see on a regular SmackDown or a Raw show. You know, as we've had it before, WrestleMania, the matches are all matches that could have been main event matches. But now we're getting a whole lot of, things that are dead and stuff. So hopefully, moving towards WrestleMania, that, things will start looking up. Because right now, it's looking horrible for WrestleMania 42. It is looking real bad. But anyway, we start off with the show. Drew McIntyre, telling Nick Aldis that he can take that contract that he has for Cody and Randy to sign later on in the show to stick it up his tail, saying that he was screwed again and stuff, and that they continue to put the belt on Cody Rhodes because he calls him the Golden Boy and stuff, and and I can understand that because Cody has been, he has won that title, I think twice in the last 8 months. He's lost it to Drew, in the in the three stages of hell, and now he's come back and won it from Drew, but then he just won it from John Cena just early last year. I mean, at the end of last year and stuff. So I guess you can say that Cody is the golden boy, as Drew puts it and stuff. You know, and Nick is telling that Drew brought a lot of stuff on his own and everything, and that the fact that when he was champion, he can't get mad because the opportunity came to Cody, and Cody took the opportunity and beat him for the title and stuff. I mean, with a little help from Jacob Fatu. And then Jacob Fatu comes out, and he's telling Drew, hey, if it wasn't for him, that, Drew would have never even had the title, to even be facing Cody, for the championship and everything. So he said, like, look, I was the one that made you win the title. And he said that he was the one that made him lose the title. And he's telling Drew, on that point, what are you going to do about it? So Drew gets a little bit pissed off, and he goes into Nick Aldis' face, and he tells Nick Aldis that he quits. So Drew has walked away, saying that he's done. He quit. So we're gonna see how far that is, because this is not Drew's first time for saying that he quit. I remember when he won the um, briefcase. He turned it in. He was the champion for I think about 2-3 minutes, and then he gets beat. Well, actually, I think he won the title, and then I believe CM Punk, somebody, Seth Rollins, I believe, was the one that came out, and beat him. And I know there's a couple of other times that Drew had the opportunity to have the title, and then instantly losing the title and stuff like that. So Drew's had a pretty bad time, rough time as far as the titles are concerned throughout his career and stuff. But officially now, he said that he's quit. And then we move on to Solo Sikoa and the MFTs. Solo telling them that their plan is working and that the Y6 no longer the number one contenders. You know, for the title shot, for the titles and everything. And as long as they have the lantern, that the Y6 is nothing. And then he tells Tamatonga, to hold on to the lantern, while they have this match and hold on to it, with his life. And then we have Shinsuke Nakamura come up to Tamatonga and tell Tamatonga, when's he going to become his own man and everything and stop, falling behind Solo Sikoa. And then Solo Sikoa comes back and tells um, Shinsuke Nakamura, to stay away from his family before, he gets hurt and stuff. And then we get Nick Aldis and Jacob Fatu talking, and Trick Williams comes out. And Trick Williams always putting his shoes in his mouth and everything. And he's interrupted Jacob Fatu, and then they go talking about, respect and, disrespect and stuff like that. And then he talks himself, excuse me, into a match that's going to be happening later on, tonight in the show. Then we have the match with the Wyatt Six and the MFTs. This match, I mean, it was okay. It's a little bit back and forth and stuff. Um, I don't understand why they keep having this match, and they're fighting for a ladder. I, I, I mean, it's just crazy. I'm trying to make sense of this ladder thing and stuff, and why Soul Code, needs it. But I guess it's because, the Y6 can't operate without it, is what he said before. You know, and then as the match goes on, you know, um, Uncle Howdy hits Solo with the Sister Abigail, and he wins the match. And then Nikki, she goes around Nikki Cross goes around the ring. She grabs the ladder and stuff, and then somehow Tamatonga ends up with the ladder. Well, actually, she gives the ladder to Uncle Howdy, and Uncle Howdy has the ladder in his hand, and then Tamatonga hits Uncle Howdy with the cutthroat and stuff, and gets the ladder back. And Solo Sokoa and them, they walk off with it. Then we got Las Gaza, talking with R-Truth and Damian Priest and everything. Um, and they're saying that, Las Gaza is saying that, Damian Priest and R-Truth took advantage of them in the gauntlet match and everything, that they had already wrestled 3 other matches, and then they won. And so I guess Damian Priest said, hey, look, okay, well, the opportunity is yours right now. Take it. We'll see you in the ring. And so they go to the ring and stuff. And then they, set up for a match later on, tonight. And then you get the match with Jay Cargill and Michin. Now this match has been set up for a while. Michin's been, trying to get at Jade, saying that she's gonna, put Jade in her place and stuff like that, along with, BFAB and everything and stuff. But earlier in the year, I guess Jade and Michin had a match, and I think Michin hurt her shoulder, did something. She got hurt, so she was out for a while, so she could never come back. But now she's back, and she challenged Jade. Jade took up the challenge and everything, so they went in the ring and wrestled and everything, and you know the outcome. Jade licked her, she chokeslammed her, and then she jaded her for the 1, 2, 3. And then after the match was over, Jade goes on talking about, the women backstage and everything. When they see her, when they see her coming, they stop, they try to run and hide and everything. And then she said that the world thinks that she's afraid of, Rhea Ripley, and then she tells everybody that she's not afraid of Rhea Ripley and stuff, and that and at WrestleMania that she's going to beat Rhea Ripley's tail and show her why she's the main woman that's on top, and that she's the champion. And as she's saying that, Rhea Ripley, her music starts playing and Rhea comes out and stuff. And then I basically, look at each other and start talking about the same thing they were talking about, and everything. And then Rhea ends up telling Jade, after the match in at WrestleMania, and that Jade, that she's gonna beat Jade for the title, that she's gonna make Jade her B and stuff. So this is gonna be interesting. I think they needed to come to blows and stuff. Kind of like hype it up, build it up. I think some point, in the next 5 weeks that might happen between, the two. I mean, if you're gonna build it, build it to where there's some action, not build it to where there's gonna be any talk and stuff, because both of them are just talking and nobody's showing any kind of action with each other and stuff. I mean, neither one of them are all that great on the mic is doing the promos and stuff like that. But let that size and everything as they talk about, let that be the thing that gets them going and stuff. So, man, we'll see. And then we get a little backstage thing, Nick, telling Cody to focus, on signing, the contract. And then Sami Zayn comes out, and Sami Zayn start talking the same crap they was talking before, about Cody and everything. And then Cody's telling Sammy that he knew that he talked to Randy Orton and stuff like that. And so they go into that little spick and spack and everything, and I think it's all like Cody said is that, he asked Sammy that if he wants a title shot, all he has to do is just say he wants a title shot, you know, um, whether, Randy wins or whether it's he as champion. Go to Nick Aldis, ask for a shot, and I'm sure that he'll give him a shot. And I'm sure that Cody would give Sammy a shot if he comes out of WrestleMania. But after that whooping he took tonight, I don't think that's going to happen. I believe Randy Orton is going to go to WrestleMania and come out a 15-time world champion and beat the hell out of Sami Zayn on the way and stuff, defending the title and stuff. And then Aleister Black, comes out to Sammy, and he's, and then Sammy tells Aleister Black, to stay out of his, stay away from him and stuff. So I guess Aleister Black is trying to put his little 2 cents into something and everything. And that part of it I don't understand, because we could have kept, Damian Cross and everything and to do whatever that whole skit, him and Scarlett could have done that, what they're doing with Aleister Black and Zelina. So, but anyway, then you got Michin and B-Fab, talking to Rhea Ripley, and Rhea Ripley is telling, that telling Michin that she did a pretty good job, with Jade. But of course, Jade whooped that tail, so I don't know what she's talking about. But anyway, Michin gets, upset and said if it wasn't the fact that she was hurt and everything, that she could have, probably did something to beat Jade, but we know that wasn't going to happen. And then we get the match, for the women's tag title and stuff, and it's Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss against Nia Jax and Lash Legend. This match was okay, and then we had the Bella twins come down, Nikki and Brie come down. They were going to watch and observe the match and stuff, So the match got on and stuff. I mean, it was all that great. It was okay. It was a pretty decent match, it was a little back and forth and stuff like that. But you knew at that point, because Brie and Nikki was out there, that something was going to happen and there was going to be an interference, something going on and everything into the match. And lo and behold, that's what happens. I think Nia Jax got down and got in the Breeze phase and stuff, and then somebody got pushed and everything, and then Nikki jumps in the ring, and then she jumps on top of Lash, and her and Nick, and they get going and everything, and then the match becomes a disqualification match. So then we get R-Truth, talking to Jelly Roll and Damian Priest, you know, and they're talking about the match that's going to be coming up, and Jelly Roll is giving them hey tell them that good luck and all that stuff, and in the match and everything. And then we get Alexa Bliss and Charlotte, talking to the Bella Twins, and telling the Bella Twins that, hey, look, had they not interfered in the match, they could have won the tag team titles back, and and stuff like that. And then Nikki and Brie are saying that, hey, look, it didn't matter what, that whoever the tag team title they have next at at a title shot. So someone telling me pretty soon that this match with them are going to probably be a triple threat tag team title, for the women's championship at WrestleMania. It's gonna, oh man, it's just gonna be crazy and stuff. And then we got Damian Priest and R-Truth going against Gaza and stuff. The match was, it was okay. It was, pretty decent. It wasn't all that bad and everything like that. Those guys that they did their thing. Damian Priest and R-Truth actually looking pretty doggone good as a tag team. And then in the match, R-Truth gets the AA, and Damian Priest, does the South to Heaven body slam, and they win the match. And then we get the little segment with Johnny Gargano still stretched out on something. In the Motor City Machine Guns, they're talking about getting a match next week, fighting against Fraxium. And again, I'm lost with all this. Make it make sense, because the fact is, why are we having this with the Motor City Machine Guns and Fraxium? I mean, I hope this is not going to be a match that's going to be, for WrestleMania. I mean, it's just like I said earlier. Some of these matches, boy, are going to be crazy. WrestleMania 42 is not going to be the WrestleMania that we're all going to be looking for. It's going to be insane. And then we got Miz, and Danhausen. I mean, and this is crazy too, because it's leading up to nothing. Danhausen is telling Miz that he's cursed and stuff, because the Miz won't do what Danhausen wants him to do. You know, and then we got Miz TV. Because Danhausen talking about that he wants to take Miz's segment away from him as far as Miz TV, and Miz tells him no, because Miz is supposed to be a mentor to him and stuff. And so then we get the segment with Miz, with Jelly Roll and stuff, and then the Miz is telling Jelly Roll that you know he could be his mentor. And Jelly Roll is basically saying, he doesn't need, really need a mentor and stuff like that. And that the fact that it's all seemed crazy. And then Kit Wilson comes out. And then Kit Wilson's starting to talk crap, to Jelly Roll, saying that Jelly Roll, is the problem, not the Miz and everything. And then Jelly Roll is saying that he'll knock the hell out of Kit Wilson and stuff. And then Kit Wilson ends up pushing Jelly Roll, and then Jelly Roll walks off, kind of shakes it off. Then as the Miz is talking to him and everything, trying to hold him back, trying to hold Kit Wilson back, Jelly Roll throws a punch at Kit, and he misses, and he hits the Miz, socks him right in his face and stuff. So that segment, I mean, it was okay. It wasn't that bad, but it was good to see Miz get knocked on his tail and everything. But anyway, then we get Ilya Dragunov talking to Carmelo Hayes, and Carmelo Hayes, talking the same thing that they've been talking about before, as to why Ilya Dragunov won't, fight Carmelo Hayes, and he's, mentioning the fact about stuff that Ilya said about his mom and everything, and being the woman that she is, and he just claims that he's just not ready to, do that fight, to fight Carmelo Hayes for that title. And Carmelo Hayes said, like, look, everybody's not, looking to fight Ilya Dragunov. They're looking to fight, for a championship, you know, um, match as far as he's concerned and stuff. So he's basically telling Ilya to get it together or he'll never see that shot again. But I'm thinking that somewhere down the line, before WrestleMania, he'll either drag it off from somewhere. We'll find some kind of something, and it'll be that match between him and Camilla Hayes on one of the days at WrestleMania. I promise you that that's gonna happen and stuff. And then we got Tiffany Stratton. She's getting ready to come out. As far as her match is concerned, and then Chelsea Green comes in, and Tiffany pushes Chelsea, out of the way, and Elba Fire is trying to chase her and stuff. So Tiffany's getting ready to get into the ring with Kiana James, and she's telling him that Julia that she's coming after her and coming after her title and stuff. So now we got Tiffany coming from world champion status, gonna fight now for a mid title status and stuff, which makes zero sense. Make that make sense to me and stuff. But anyway, you got Kit Wilson coming out telling the Miz, he's going to fight Jelly Roll and stuff. Oh man. So I guess there's gonna be a little talk next week between Jelly Roll and Kit Wilson. See where that goes. And I promise you, it's gonna probably be a shot at one of them days at WrestleMania. Oh man, it's just getting crazy. WWE is just losing it. You know, um, Triple H said that we were gonna have the best WrestleMania of all time, and this WrestleMania is about to suck. I mean, it's like only a couple of matches on here that may be good. We don't know. You know, oh man. And then Danhausen telling Miz that if he was at ringside when he got punched in the face by Jelly Roll, that he could have been there to defend Miz's honor and stuff. And then we get the match with Tiffany Stratton and Kiana James. Uh, yeah, the matches. I mean, it was okay. I mean, like I said, Kiana James is starting to come into her own. Tiffany Stratton. She's getting a little bit better in the ring. So I mean, you know, we're gonna see what happens with these young ladies and stuff. But I believe Kiana James is about to be a star somewhere if they do it right, push it right, and stuff like that. It's good to see Tiffany Stratton back, but going for a mid title and stuff. I guess if Becky Lynch could do it, anybody can do it and stuff. And then Chelsea tries to interfere into the match, and then Julia she pushes Chelsea down into her little wheelchair thing and stuff, and so they're all going into it and everything. And then as Julia tries to hold Tiffany, she gets kicked in the face by Kiana James, and then Tiffany gets Kiana. She drops her, puts her down, hit her with the prettiest moonsault, and wins the match. And then we got Trick Williams, in the backstage, telling Jacob Fatu, since he wants, to call people out and everything, that he's gonna take off his lemon pepper steppers and and smack, the boogeyman out of him and stuff. I mean, Trick Williams is a trip. I mean, I love this guy, and I hope that they push him right. I hope they don't do anything stupid and hold him back and everything. I think, you know, I don't know, Trick Williams, he's good. He's good. I like it. I can't wait to see how his career goes as time goes by. And then Sami Zayn, comes out telling Trick everything that Trick told Sammy last week about getting the job done. He was going to show him how to get the job done and everything. And then Sami Zayn is telling Trick that he can't get the job done and stuff. And then we get the match with Jacob Fatu and Trick Williams. And the match was actually a pretty, good match. I mean, Jacob Fatu did his thing, Trick Williams did his thing and stuff. But you knew at some point At some point in this match, that Drew McIntyre was going to show up, and then Drew McIntyre did show up, and then Trick hits Jacob Fatu with the trick shot, and wins the match. So they let Trick Williams go over Jacob Fatu and stuff, which is weird, especially with Jacob Fatu going after wanting to be after Drew McIntyre, but can't go after Drew McIntyre because Drew McIntyre said he quit. So we'll see what happens there. Does Jacob actually go and they try to do a little storyline between Jacob Fatu and Trick Williams? We'll see. I don't know where that's going to get us, but we'll see because it's not for anything because neither one of them have the title and stuff. And then we get the contract signing, with Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. And it seems like, Cody's telling, everybody that, when he first came in the WWE, his first match in 2007 was against, Randy Orton, you know, and him and Randy Orton had their little match and stuff like that. And I'm not sure. I don't think Cody won that first match. I think he might have. But, they've wrestled themselves in between and stuff. And then as they're signing, the belt, then Cody, embraces and shakes, Randy's hand and stuff. So it seemed like it was going to be pretty good. We're going to have like two faces go at it and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden that switch and Randy's head went off. He puts Cody's head through the announcer table, kicks him between the legs, and he then destroys Cody and stuff. He busts him wide open and stuff. I mean, the blood was flowing. And then after that, he beat him up with the stairs from the ring and stuff. I mean, he had Cody laid out, and then he goes and gets a chair, and the man, he hits Cody with the chair and stuff. So he leaves Cody in a mess and stuff. So this match, I mean, they're going to build the match up and everything because they do have to have another big match. Trying to put butts in seats and stuff. Because I know Randy and not Randy, but CM Punk and Roman Reigns. I think everybody's looking forward to seeing that. I think that's getting a little bit dry and stuff. So some sparks need to fly in that match too and stuff. But I guess now that you see everything that it's building up and it's going to end up, I mean, WrestleMania has to be a good WrestleMania, because I think if they don't set this up good as promised, I think WWE is just going to fall apart after that. I really do believe that because right now, they're losing, losing viewership, and it's hard now to start putting, for tickets, for them to sell tickets to the events and everything. But we'll see what happens. Like I said, 5 weeks before WrestleMania, I'm hoping that they can do it to make it a good WrestleMania, but we'll see. All right. Well, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share. Please hit that bell, for notification for the next video. And thank you for watching. God bless. Deuces. And I'll see you on the next video. Thank you.